Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I've been working on this little project here in VCV Rack. It started by being inspired by this video by Glasspipe. So I'm not going to play it just because I don't want to take their content, but it's really pretty video. So you should definitely watch it. Um, and they were doing some fun stuff with Bernoulli gates and uh, like was it ADSRs and whatnot. And honestly, it just started out where I had this idea. I put down two modules, Bernoulli gate, ADSR sequencer, whatever, and then from there I started to form this bigger picture. So let me show you how. Well, first let me play a couple of seconds of what it sounds like, so you get an idea of what we are building here. Okay, so basically let's start from the beginning here. So we're starting with this clock. This clock is swung, which doesn't mean anything because there's no other BPNs happening. So it's just like I had this because I had other modules, like a whole nother section, but it was competing, so I removed it. But the point is that it's like swung, whatever. We're at 80 beats per minute. This clock is at 1 times. This one's 2.5, and this is 8. And then from there, we're doing Bernoulli gates, which are basically like channel probabilities. So it's switching between these two outputs. And we're going very rapidly, but there's like a 50% chance. So sometimes it switches, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just pauses there for a moment. And this is the 8 times pace. And I'll get to what that's used for in a moment. Then we have the same thing down here. And this guy is basically two gates where we're taking this first one. We're having 70% chance that it's gonna come out and do its thing here to these other modules over in this direction, which we'll get into, and then also into here. And then it goes into here and it has percent chance of coming out here to trigger this burst. So what the burst does is it creates a burst of basically notes. I've set it to 3, so it's a very short burst. It's kind of quick, but nothing crazy. And this is just kind of used for uh, little moments of time where I want a quick switch or something, a quick change. And this is placed to a lot of things. Um, so at the top here, I basically originally had this idea for like a ladder. So if you think about how you climb a ladder, you typically do one hand on one side, then you do up with the other hand on the other side, and you're like going up and down. It's basically just a way of like alternation. And originally my idea was if I could alternate these sequencers, it would sound kind of cool. And I'm kind of doing that, but not really because like there's this probability of hitting that makes it so it's like sometimes this one might get triggered twice and sometimes this one might get triggered twice, or this one will just do one and then this one will do one back and forth. um, and then I'm basically taking these outputs of these like two different sequences I've created, and we're basically combining them into this switch, which is just has a latch, but it's like either input one or input two, kind of. And what it's kind of doing, I think, you can tell me if I'm wrong in the comments because I'm not fully sure about this, is that because I'm layering the two ADSR sequencers on top of each other, the signal's kind of being combined in a way. Whereas, like, you will have moments where it's just like completely like random to an extent. It's not completely random, but the value that we're getting from the signal and output is a certain number, and it's determined by whatever the sequence is. But the way that it's set up is it's like you have, and this is kind of wrong. It's 8 times 8, maybe possible numbers. I don't think that's the right thing, But it's basically like if one hits like this one, and then this one hits, you get a number. And then this one could switch to here, or this one could switch to here. Doesn't really matter. And depending on those things, the number changes. So the point is that we're getting something where it's sounds a little random, but it's familiar because it's not completely random. Like there is some like overlap that can happen. It's not crazy often, but it's, 1 out of 8 or something. Of course, the steps are a little bit different here, so it's like shortened and we're skipping over stuff. But the point is that there are times where we're just gonna hit the same thing and then it'll sound kind of familiar. So the idea was this is like pseudo random, but also audible to an extent where you can kind of latch onto it a little bit. And then after that, of course, we're adding some bursts on top of this. So every once in a while, it'll burst and it'll do a quick 3 in a succession, changing that. And basically, the way that it's set up is it's kind of random, but sometimes the VCA that's holding everything together, or sorry, the latch, it will go and allow this burst to happen. But other times it'll just be like normal whateveriness. So after we go here, we go the output into the latch. So the latch's purpose is I wanted a rock kind of sound, something that is, you can feel. How do I describe this? I'm trying to think of the right wording, but something that's like grounding. You kind of know that sound, and it's going to happen every certain amount of time. It's at a constant pace to an extent, and most of the time it sounds pretty samey. Like, of course, we're doing the alternation-y thing, and you get the weird numbers, but a lot of times there's overlap, as we stated, I think. And this random is just we're putting a random number into this gate. So I was going to use like noise or something, but this just works better. And it's like alternation every once in a while at a very like slow pace with this random, where we have a probability for a trigger at 30% of 30%, and then the rate is 1 hertz. So you can see when this lights up, it's hitting, and then it has a 30% chance to come out of here, as you can see it just did, and go into these two locations. One, to trigger the randomizer, which gets affected by this constant clock, this burst generator, and this trigger. And then it goes into this ADSR. And the reason is I wanted something to trigger this switch. But if you just do the trigger itself, it's not a gate. It's a trigger, and gates and triggers are two different things. So when you have like a gate, it's more of a like let me see if I can give you a good example of this. Just so we can see it for the people who don't know. But I mean, I imagine all this stuff is very confusing for the people who don't know, and those who do VCV rack probably totally understand what I'm talking about. But I'm going to show you anyways. So if the probability is high, you can see this is a trigger. It's a single, like, up to 10, very, very short burst thing. But if we do, like, I thought there was a way to do that there. If we do, like, button here, this might just be the same thing. No, this is a gate. A gate is more so something that's held open and lets things pass through versus something that is just used to trigger things. Now, what that kind of means is in VCV Rack, there's a bunch of numbers. Everything's a number, kind of. And you basically, in default, like for a lot of modules, you go from 0 to 10. That's the number. Or, sorry, -10 to +10. And if you hit +10, that's essentially like an on signal, an O or a 1, whatever the correct one is for like do this. And it basically like triggers this gate. But if it's like 0, nothing happens, and if it's -0, -10, nothing happens. But the point is, with a gate, you're going and you're opening up, like this one is only going to like half. It's not going to 10, but it's a trigger. Whereas with the randomizer, it's going to 10. In any case, we use this ADSR specifically because I couldn't figure out how to do a proper gate thing. So I wanted something that would hit 10 and be there long enough to hear some change. So we're doing an ADSR. If we look on a scope of what the ADSR looks like, you can see holds it open long enough for stuff to pass through. So from there, we go from the switch. This is the randomizer. We're getting a bunch of randomized voltages or numbers, and we're basically, one of them is the probability here for this burst generator of hitting, and then the other two things here are to determine the characteristic of the sound. Of course, I haven't really changed the CV, so it's not doing much, but it's like the harmonics and the timbre. And that's just being random numbers, as you can see. Then outside that, we feed some stuff into another ADSR, namely the burst and this guy here, the channel 2 output of this fast clock. And the purpose of this is to open up this VCA so that the sound is not just a held note always. Now, of course, I'm also triggering this guy, so it's not really getting like, it's, the way that I'm doing it is kind of like with a trigger, but at the same time, it's like slightly off, I think. These might be the same exact ones, but no. This one is from the burst generator, and this guy. Okay, so it is kind of, it's the same exact thing, basically. I thought I had changed it so they were off-center, like with some swing, so you could trigger the oscillator, but the VCA wouldn't open, and then you'd get some weird timings. But I didn't do that. That would be easy to implement. In any case, we do this, and it just opens up the envelope generator, the ADSR, which allows sound to pass through at some rate that is determined by the burst and the Bernoulli gate. From there, we go into one of my favorite modules, Prince of Perception, which is, it's kind of like an echo, but it's specifically a delay looper. So, it has this very pretty sound to it. From there, into Plateau, where we have a very small wet level, so you get that reverb, but nothing crazy. So let's open the sound back up, give it another listen. So, there we go. I hope you guys enjoyed this little VCV rack thing. I've just been fooling around a bunch lately and came up with this idea. So I'm gonna probably expand on it, possibly more today. Who knows? Maybe I'll come up with another idea and post that in coming days or something. But we'll see. Yeah. Anyways, that's all I got. Hope you guys enjoy. Love you. Bye.